Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People. In today's episode, entitled neighbor mows our lawn without permission then expects payment. Photographer wants $1,000 for us to train him. My brother is so selfish when it comes to food and it pisses me off. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Entitled neighbor mows our lawn without permission then expects payment. So our neighbor is new to the street. 6 months tops. He owns a mowing service and wakes me nearly every morning at 4:20 a.m. using power tools of some kind out the front before he heads to work. So last week my husband started to whipper snip the front, however a storm came across and he had to come inside before he could mow. On the weekend we hear both neighbors start mowing at 8 a.m. as we are getting the kids ready for a birthday party. I look out the front and see the new neighbor on his ride on doing our front lawn. As I notice him, he finishes and goes back next door. I mentioned it to my husband and we are both feeling pretty awkward about it as we haven't formally met them, and why is he randomly mowing our lawn? Is he being nice? What is this? We head out to the kids' party and arrive home midday. Under the door is a bill for lawn mowing. The cheeky sod was asking for $55 for 30 minutes on his ride-on. That we didn't ask for. I take the bill to their house and hand it to his wife, explaining we weren't paying as we never asked him to mow and we are extremely confused by the situation. She honestly didn't even look shocked at what her husband did. She said she will give it back to him, and that was it. We are thinking they were trying to scam us into paying. Seriously, who charges $110 per hour for a mowing service? Had a neighbor do almost the same thing. Mowed the nature strip a few times without ever really meeting or knowing him. He was an avid gardener, so always mowed before I ever had a chance. Then, after a few mows, he slipped a note in the letterbox. I've been mowing for free, from now on it's $20 per month. I was like, I have a mower. I can do it myself. LOL, that mofo actually tried to apply drug dealer tactics on lawn mowing. When we moved into our new home, 20 plus years ago, we had a neighbor who was upset that our lawn was getting weedy 3 days after we arrived. It was July. We drove 3 days, from UT to MI, with 2 kids, 3 dogs, a cat and an iguana. After we got there, Hubs flew out for work, leaving kids, and I had to unload the truck and settle in. The lawn didn't even make the top 10 of what needed to be done. My lawn began to sprout dandelions. This was simply too much for one neighbor, and he came to my door to ask me to control them because they would infect his lawn. I let him know that we wouldn't use herbicides due to our animals. Neighbor number 2 offers to mow the lawn. Cool. Despite the chaos of my house, I bake her a cake as a thank you. Hubs comes home and here comes neighbor number 1 to speak to the man of the house about those dandelions. Hubby tells him that it's true, we won't use herbicides. Next day, a bag of Weed Be Gone was on our doorstep. I never spoke to neighbor number 1 again. Neighbor number 2 mowed our yard for a few more times until we got our own riding mower. I baked a cake each time. Years later, I found out that she was upset we didn't pay her. My ESP wasn't working and she never said word one. Neighbor number 2 has been frustrating. She had no control over her teenagers, forcing us to install an alarm system and outdoor lighting to prevent theft. Then the husband passed and her health has declined. She has an ever-changing household of grandkids and their loser friends who just can't seem to operate a mower, so last year I mowed her lawn. She asked my husband why I mowed and he said I did it because she couldn't. She said she couldn't pay me and seemed confused when Hub said we didn't want payment, we just wanted to help out. So, strange. Might be passive-aggressive too? Maybe he felt you were neglecting it and he's making a point? Does your town have no noise ordinances? Here you cannot make disruptive noise between 11 to 7. You might be able to report his use of power tools, maybe fines will teach him consideration? lawn was actually not looking bad. Especially since my husband started snipping. Being in a rural area, lawns aren't always super short. But definitely not over 2 inches, super normal. We have a daughter with special needs and struggle to keep up with jobs, but again the lawn was done in the last month. And yes, I think we have noise conditions. But it's always try to talk to your neighbor first, before you can lodge. But I'm going to go over one morning at 4:20 a.m. asking what he's doing. I had a neighbor do that too, mowed straight over our water meter, knocking the head off it, along with my heirloom tomato and chili plants, then tried to bill us $100 even while there was a fucking geyser in the yard thanks to him. Given you said AUD. He can't start any power tools including lawnmowers before 7 a.m. weekdays. On weekends it's supposed to be 9 a.m. But I think 8 a.m. is fine, especially if you're up north cause the heat. I mean, if he's a business, he's heard of contracts. You didn't contract him, so no need to pay. As for the 420 power tools, definitely worth checking your local ordinances for noise regulations. Had a neighbor do the same when I was a single parent. I would come home from work and the lawn would be mowed, even my backyard that had a gate. It confused me and also scared me a little. One day I was outside mowing because I didn't want whoever it was to continue. The neighbor who lived behind me and I hadn't met yet came to the fence and told me that women shouldn't mow lawns. He tried to grab the mower from me. He was from another country and I suspect it was a cultural thing. I politely told him that I enjoyed mowing and asked if he had been mowing my lawn. He said yes and repeated that women don't mow lawns. I told him I appreciated it but would like to mow it myself. He was angry, stormed off, and I could hear yelling in his house. It continued throughout the summer if the grass got higher than like 1.5 inches. I put a lock on my gate and a few weeks later got a note in my door that said lawn $150. I didn't know what to do, tried to talk to his wife about it, but she had no idea he was doing it because she also worked during the day. I hated it. Thankfully they moved not too long after that, but the whole thing was so uncomfortable. I avoided my backyard that whole summer so I wouldn't have to see him. People are wild. If he demands payment, remind him you didn't ask for his services, he provided them on his own. Under the Australian consumer law, this is an unsolicited service and he doesn't have a leg to stand on if he continues to demand payment. You would have every right to lodge a complaint with the Fair Trading Agency in your state if he keeps pushing it. In high school, my neighbor would mow into our yard. Basically just extending where he was mowing from his yard until he was fairly deep into our yard. Then he tried to claim that our flagpole, that sat dead center of our yard, was in his yard. Essentially, he was claiming we had no front yard, it was all his. Don't mind the line of trees that he planted decades ago in his yard that separate the yards, all of it was his and then some. Even our mailbox was his. He eventually dropped it when we showed him official documents that outlined the properties. Though we did lean then, that on the other side of the property, our driveway had cut into the other neighbor's yard. I suggest sending him a certified letter to stay off your property in the future, or you will contact the police and have him trespassed. Photographer wants $1,000 for us to train him. This is my first time posting in this sub, but this is too hilarious not to share. My daughter and I are horse people, and damn do I have to work hard to support this lifestyle, lol. I have ridden my whole life regularly until I got Lyme. My daughter has ridden since she was a child. We are extremely fortunate to be at a gorgeous barn with the best trainer ever. There is a photographer, L, that I met through a business networking group. He typically does family photos, sports events, parties, etc. He seems like a nice enough guy, and his work is pretty good. Nothing special, but nice shots. He called me a couple weeks ago and told me he wanted to break into equestrian photography and would I have any advice on how to do that. I invited him to our barn to discuss. He came and had a terrific time, took some photos, and we talked about having him attend a horse show with us. In return for the trainer and the barn girls advising him on what he should be looking for and what angles to shoot during the show, he would provide prints at low cost. We talked about how valuable the trainer's time was, and yet she was willing to take the time with him. Now this trainer is one of the top in the Northeast and also works with TV and movies to train actors who need to be on horseback. She is much in demand, but because I asked her, she would advise the photographer at the show and also allow him to attend a group jumping lesson for more training. Obviously she is not a photographer, but is well versed in what actions shots of horses should involve. Elle seemed very excited about the opportunity and seemed to understand the value. Well, last night he emailed me. Instead of providing low-cost shots in exchange for knowledge in horse behavior, action, etc., he decided that he needs $1,000 up front to attend the show and needs assurance he will be the only photographer there. Further, he needs the email addresses of every competitor so he can sell his photos. This is the polar opposite of what we discussed. I was dying laughing, more so because he sent me a link to the shots he took when he was visiting and they were awful. Like laughably awful. The lighting was a disaster, the angles were terrible. Just so bad. I am still laughing about it and needed to share. Email him back the trainer's full rates for an entire day of her time. As she has a lot of commitments, she needs the payment up front before she'll commit to teaching him anything more about horses. Tell him nay. His unbridled enthusiasm isn't enough to make up for lack of talent. $1,000 is a fair price. We require a $250 non-refundable deposit, due immediately. You can pay the balance of $750 at the venue. Please arrive 15 minutes early to complete paperwork and insurance releases, and bring your own lunch, meals are not provided. OMG. This is nuts. Him asking for money and email addresses? I've done something slightly similar to this. I've asked for access to smaller venues to shoot celebrities and artists. I gave my contact digital images and prints. In return, I got nice shots for my portfolio. But $1,000? I hope you post an update to this. I don't think I could take this fella seriously about anything going forward. Good luck. Someone's been listening to the Scale Up Your Income by Demanding Compensation Regardless of Ability or Quality of Product podcasts. Just one person needs to say yes. Wow, those are terrible photos, those horses do not look happy to see him, and that is terrible behavior. In what world does he think he is in a position to demand anything of you after seeking you out is beyond me. What are you going to say back to him? On a side note, I would love to learn more about horses and photographing them. I'm actually a wedding and dance photographer, as my daughter adores animals and will learn to ride as soon as she is old enough. Where in the Northeast are you? We are on the shoreline in CT. Just go to an event and start shooting pics. Also know that horse people are spending a lot of money on that horse. Might not have a lot of money left for photos. I made more money shooting whitewater rafters. Speaking of polar opposites, this is exactly 180 degrees from what photographers usually experience. Come shoot my event, I'll make sure everyone knows about you, you'll get an unbelievable amount of exposure. Maybe he's tired of having it done to him and thought he could turn the tables. But I'm likely giving way too much credit. I absolutely believe in paying artists for their work, 100%. But dude approached me and asked for help. So funny. I feel like someone must have gotten it into his head that this was one of those situations, and that he should make demands. I think I just replied back with thanks, but I decline. Leave it at that. OL boy may try to negotiate, but I think it will just be easier to say no thank you. I wouldn't even answer him tbh. Inconsiderate people deserve no consideration. My brother is so selfish when it comes to food and it pisses me off. My mom still makes my 16-year-old brother's breakfast every morning for school, and I mean every single morning. And he complains and gets super mad if she doesn't. I've asked my mom about it and her response is, he won't eat if I don't make it for him and I want him to eat. So, in conclusion, my brother would starve to death if my mom wasn't there because he can't even make an egg on the stove. He can eat lunch if there are microwavable products, but that's about it. He doesn't know how to use the oven or the stove. And if he's out of food, he will proceed to move to my food that my mom separated for me, or else my brother will eat it all in one night. My favorite chips are salt and vinegar, and my mom went to the store and bought a Pringles jar of them for me and put them in the chip jar. My brother usually ends up sleeping on the couch at night to watch the big screen TV. Remember that. I come upstairs the next morning. I wake up pretty early and so does my mom. So I came upstairs and sat at the bar and started talking with her while she made breakfast. Eventually, my brother woke up and turned on the TV. I stand up to go to the living room. Our living room was just one big room, so you could be cooking something on the stove and easily see the TV and living room at the same time. Anyway, I start to pass my brother on the couch and notice the Pringles jar sitting there. I walk over and my anger overflows my body when I pick up the empty jar. He ate the entire jar in one night. He didn't even think about the other people in the house. Groceries had cost a lot at the time because of inflation. So my mom would be spending $300 plus of groceries every 2 weeks. So since my brother had eaten the only jar of my favorite chips the same night we had gotten them, I was understandably mad. I stare at the jar for a second, then yell at him, "Did you eat the entire jar in one night? I didn't even get a chance to eat any." My mom heard and very quickly got mad. She yelled at my brother, which I appreciated. He was forced to buy more chips, and now every time any food I want that my brother may potentially like enters the house, my mom either hides it from me or she just gives it to me and tells me to hide it in my room. So my brother is definitely selfish when it comes to food. P.S. My submission is only here because another post on this subreddit reminded me of this. Did not copy anyone. I'm glad she at least sided with you. These Reddit's moms often don't in these situations, sadly. 100%. That's the bit that surprised me most about the post. Exactly, I was expecting her to yell at you for disrespecting your brother or something. We used to hide all the junk food in my room because that's all my younger brother would eat growing up. He was very picky. But maybe your mom just needs to stop helping him. I understand that's her baby, but she's enabling his behavior by treating him like one. He needs to learn to fend for himself sooner rather than later, especially with the inflation, to better understand as well as appreciate the food that is made and bought. Growing up, food was cheap, but we also knew we didn't have much to go on, especially now. And I regret the way I would spend my earning as a child. But man, do I appreciate the help given to me as well as have a better understanding of managing my money. Grinning face with sweat. 16 years old and can't do more than microwave. Reminds me of my now brother-in-law when I first started dating my wife, just a useless lump of a person. Mostly still is, and yours will be too unless somebody pushes him to learn some basic human skills. Mom needs to stop feeding him. He'll have enough survival instinct to figure it out. Your brother suffers from functional incompetence. He needs to grow up and learn how to do shit for himself. That and weaponized incompetence. Why should he learn anything or get off the couch if mama will do it for him? I pity the woman he marries. We read about them all the time on Reddit. It's the freaking 21st century. Why are mothers still raising idiot sons? I have the utmost empathy for you. Placing things he's allowed to eat in a specific place is a good idea. Or putting food in your room is good too. I raised 3 sons, and around that age they eat more than you or I can imagine. I used to joke that one of them was ready for second dinner every night around the time I finished cleaning the kitchen. And after dinner there were more snacks. So I agree he's being selfish, but at the same time his body is telling him to eat. Her teenage body is likely also telling her to eat. So maybe he needs to learn to prepare food for himself so that he can eat? He's not only selfish, but lazy and ignorant. Not a good look for a 16-year-old boy. He's acting like a toddler and your mom is giving in to it. Nothing will change until she stops. He won't starve. He'll have to figure something out. Meanwhile, hide your treats and lock your bedroom door. At some point, your mom should protest making food for him. If he won't understand his attitude towards it, both for his physical and emotional health, he is going to have it hard down the road. It's not just food, it's everything. He just has a selfish mindset. These people will take care of me, so I'm just going to do what I want. What a loser. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.